Art perception. How we interpret visual meaning through psychology and culture. Art perception is a multifaceted and profoundly human phenomenon that encompasses the ways in which individuals, communities, and cultures engage with, interpret, and ascribe meaning to works of art. It is not merely an act of looking, rather, it is an active, cognitive, emotional, and socio-cultural process in which sensory input is transformed into understanding, value, and sometimes ethical or political judgment. This video examines art perception from multiple angles: the cognitive and perceptual mechanisms that underlie aesthetic experience, the role of context and cultural frameworks, the influence of the artist's intention and the viewer's biography, and the broader social and institutional structures that shape how art is seen and understood. Through synthesis of theory and reflection, the aim is to clarify how art perception operates as both an individual psychological event and a collectively negotiated practice. Perceptual foundations of art experience. At the most basic level, art perception begins with sensory reception. Vision, as the principal modality for encountering visual art, involves complex physiological processes, photoreceptor responses, early visual cortex processing, and higher-order cortical integrations that convert light patterns into organized percepts. However, the mere registration of shapes, colors, and textures does not constitute the full experience of art. Perception in the context of art is an interpretive act in which low-level sensory information is organized through processes such as figure-ground segregation, pattern recognition, and gestalt grouping principles. These mechanisms enable viewers to discern forms, detect symmetry or asymmetry, and perceive spatial or temporal relationships inherent in a work. Beyond immediate perception, attention plays a critical role. Selective attention determines which aspects of an artwork are foregrounded in conscious awareness and which remain unnoticed. Artists frequently manipulate elements, contrast, color saturation, compositional lines, to guide attention intentionally, thereby shaping the perceptual trajectory of the viewer. In addition, perceptual constancies, e.g., size and color constancy, help to stabilize the visual world, enabling the observer to recognize forms despite changes in lighting or perspective. Thus, an observer's first encounter with art is guided by a suite of sensory and attentional mechanisms that scaffold subsequent cognitive and emotional processes. Cognitive interpretation and meaning-making. While perception organizes sensory input, cognition imbues it with meaning. The mind brings to the viewing process prior knowledge, categorizations, and conceptual frameworks that allow the observer to interpret what is seen. Schema theory illustrates how prior experiences guide the interpretation of new stimuli. Viewers match perceptual input against stored mental models to infer identity, narrative, or symbolic significance. For instance, a depiction of a tree may activate ecological, mythic, or personal schemas, each leading to divergent interpretive pathways. Cognitive frameworks also determine the extent to which technical features, brushwork, composition, medium, are attended to and how they are valued. A viewer familiar with Renaissance perspective will perceive a tomb scene differently than someone with expertise in contemporary installation art. Expertise thus modulates perception. Trained observers often access finer-grained structural and historical details, whereas novices may emphasize immediate emotive or decorative features. Inference and theory of mind additionally inform art perception. Viewers commonly attribute intentions to artists, constructing narratives about purpose, message, or psychological state. These attributions can engender empathy and deepen engagement, transforming static objects into communicative acts. At times, art provokes cognitive dissonance when aesthetic cues contradict expected meanings. Such dissonance can catalyze reflection and reinterpretation. Emotional dimension and aesthetic response. Emotion is inseparable from art perception. Aesthetic experience involves affective responses ranging from pleasure and awe to discomfort and disgust. Theories of aesthetic emotion explore why certain stimuli evoke profound feelings. Some posit evolutionary functions, the adaptive value of pattern recognition and social signaling, while others emphasize learned associations and cultural practices. The appraisal theory of emotion is especially pertinent. Viewers evaluate art by appraising the relevance of a work to their goals, beliefs, and values. When an artwork aligns with a viewer's identity or evokes meaningful associations, the emotional response can be intense. Similarly, feelings of aesthetic pleasure may arise from perceptual fluency, when patterns are processed easily, and from the resolution of ambiguity or complexity. Conversely, dissonant, challenging works may elicit negative affect that nonetheless leads to deeper cognitive engagement, sometimes culminating in aesthetic appreciation through an active re-evaluation of initial responses. Empathy and embodied simulation provide additional pathways for effective resonance. Mirror neuron frameworks suggest that observing gestures or bodily expressions in art, especially in figurative works, may activate neural circuits linked to the viewer's own motor and emotional systems, thus fostering vicarious experience. This embodied engagement often accounts for the visceral quality of responses to figurative painting, performance, or cinematography. The role of context, historical, cultural, and institutional art perception is deeply contextual. The same visual stimulus can be perceived differently depending on historical period, cultural background, and institutional framing. Contextual factors include the artwork's provenance, the socio-political climate in which it was produced and exhibited, and the curatorial practices that shape its display. Historically, aesthetic norms and canons have undergone profound transformations. The criteria by which art is judged, beauty, mimesis, innovation, criticality, vary across eras. A Baroque religious altarpiece once intended to instruct and inspire devotion may now be read through lenses of art historical technique or cultural appropriation. Modern and contemporary movements have deliberately destabilized traditional canons, foregrounding conceptual intent, process, or social critique. Consequently, perceiving art entails both an encounter with the object and an encounter with the temporal sediment of meanings that accrete around it. Cultural frameworks also govern modes of perception. Visual languages, symbolic systems, and aesthetic values are culturally learned. Motifs or styles that resonate in one culture may be meaningless or misinterpreted in another. Cross-cultural encounters with art often illuminate the contingency of perceptual categories and the need for cultural literacy when interpreting artworks from disparate traditions. Institutions, museums, galleries, schools of criticism, play an active role in shaping perception by mediating access, providing interpretive labels, and establishing hierarchies of value. The way an artwork is exhibited, gallery lighting, wall text, spatial arrangement, and the discourse surrounding it, catalogs, reviews, academic scholarship, influence what viewers attend to and how they construe significance. Institutional practices can legitimize certain forms and marginalize others, thereby directing collective perception and taste. Art perception. How we interpret visual meaning through psychology and culture. Art perception. How we interpret visual meaning through psychology and culture. The artist's intention versus viewer interpretation. A perennial debate in aesthetics concerns the relative weight of the artist's intention and the viewer's interpretation. The intentional fallacy, coined in literary criticism, warns against over-reliance on an authorial intent as a definitive key to meaning. Yet, the artist's intent can be an informative context that enriches understanding. The question is not whether intentions matter, but how they interact with viewer reception. From a hermeneutic perspective, interpretation is dialogic. The artwork serves as a site where intentions, textual features, and audience responses converge. In many cases, artworks are deliberately open-ended, inviting diverse readings. Contemporary art, particularly conceptual practices, often foregrounds ambiguity or performative indeterminacy, making the viewer's role in meaning production more explicit. Conversely, some artworks, didactic pieces, political posters, are designed to convey a clear message, relying on intended interpretation. A pragmatic approach acknowledges multiple valid interpretive stances. Authorial intention supplies one axis of meaning, while the viewer's socio-cultural identity, prior experiences, and emotional state supply others. A robust theory of art perception accommodates this multiplicity, allowing that a single work may sustain layered, even contradictory, interpretations over time. Social and ethical dimensions of perception. Perceiving art is never ethically neutral. The content, context, and reception of artworks can implicate moral considerations, representations of violence, depictions of marginalized groups, issues of cultural appropriation, and the colonial histories embedded in many collections demand ethical scrutiny. Viewers' responses to such works are mediated by moral framing, and perception can activate social attitudes, reinforce stereotypes, or catalyze critical reflection. Public art and politically engaged practices highlight how perception is implicated in civic life. Murals, monuments, and performance art can shape communal memory, assert identities, or provoke contestation. Debates about monuments to historical figures illustrate how perception and public values interact. What one group perceives as heritage, another perceives as oppressive symbol. Thus, art perception is a terrain where aesthetics and ethics intersect, and where disputes about representation and memory are negotiated. Moreover, the dynamics of gaze, who looks and who is looked at, carry power implications. Feminist and postcolonial critiques have emphasized asymmetries in representation, calling attention to how certain perspectives have been normalized while others are excluded. Attentive perception thus requires critical awareness of the power relations embedded in visual cultures. Technologies and evolving modalities of perception. Technological advancements continually reshape art perception. The advent of photography altered notions of representation and authenticity. Film and video brought temporality and narrative into visual arts. Digital media and networked platforms have democratized production and dissemination while complicating questions of originality and aura. Walter Benjamin's analysis of mechanical reproduction remains salient. Reproduction changes how art is experienced, decoupling the artwork from its original context and enabling new forms of mass perception. Recent developments, virtual reality, augmented reality, algorithmically generated art, further transform perceptual possibilities. Immersive environments can simulate embodied presence, allowing viewers to inhabit alternative perspectives or to interact with artworks in unprecedented ways. Algorithms that recommend art based on prior preferences influence exposure and taste, raising concerns about echo chambers that reinforce narrow aesthetic horizons. Simultaneously, digital tools enable new forms of collective curation and critique, expanding participatory frameworks for perception. Technological mediation also raises questions about the materiality of art and the role that physical presence plays in aesthetic experience. While high-resolution images can convey visual detail, many argue that the phenomenological encounter with an artwork, the scale, texture, and aura of presence, is irreplaceable. Ongoing debates consider whether digital surrogates supplement or supplant embodied perception and what new competencies viewers must develop to engage with hybrid, multimedia practices. Pedagogy and cultivation of perceptual skill. Perception is not static. It can be cultivated through education and practice. Art education aims to develop visual literacy, the capacity to decode, interpret, and critically assess visual information. Pedagogical strategies includes formal analysis, examining line, color, composition, contextual study, historical, cultural, and experiential learning, studio practice, museum visits. Such training broadens perceptual repertoires and fosters nuanced appreciation. Critical pedagogy emphasizes the development of reflective habits, encouraging learners to question assumptions, to attend to power dynamics in representation, and to articulate aesthetic judgments with intellectual rigor. Moreover, interdisciplinary approaches, incorporating psychology, sociology, and philosophy, help to situate art perception within wider humanistic inquiry. Cultivation of perceptual skill also involves fostering openness to ambiguity and discomfort. Exposure to avant-garde or challenging works can expand cognitive and affective thresholds, enabling viewers to tolerate uncertainty and to experience richer forms of aesthetic insight. In this respect, education functions not merely to transmit evaluative criteria but to enlarge capacities for empathy, critical reflection, and aesthetic imagination. In summary, art perception is a complex interplay of sensory, cognitive, emotional, and contextual factors. It represents a dynamic negotiation between artist, viewer, and artwork. Understanding this process allows us to appreciate how art shapes and is shaped by our collective human experience. If you found this exploration of art perception enlightening, I invite you to delve deeper into the topic. Subscribe for more insights and engage with the comments below.